I got the sound all queued up. I might get going fast. My coffee's ready. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm John Migla. For the WDMA. We're talking about mail today. Stick with me. I think you'll enjoy it. But first, we're going to talk about productivity. Oh, before I go on, Summer wrote me 2 messages. I don't know if you saw those, but I asked her how you would know if someone was Jewish when you're sending out your Christmas cards, besides knowing them personally, which was usually the case with me. And she said, yes, we would run it with matching Jewish surnames. And you're right that it's not 100%. Some companies have religious affiliation in their data too. Now that one would probably come from a nonprofit, more likely, to be a religious nonprofit that would include that. So that would be interesting. So it's always a little more interesting than you think. Right? Okay, so now we also talked about the hybrid workforce. So let's get over there. Ugh, productivity paranoia. Managers with less control over hybrid workforce are developing productivity paranoia, which is repeated now 3 times. Employers and leaders aren't remotely on the same page. Okay, so 87% of employees report being productive at work, while only 12% of leaders are confident their employees are being productive. That sounds like the story of work in the history of humanity, my guess, of course. You never think your employees are working as hard as they ought to be, and the employees are thinking they're overworked and underpaid, and that's kind of the way it is. So it's not a surprise to me, but I think that graph really says it all. Absolutely right. Okay. So headlines are still dissecting quiet quitting. I watched a video last night on let it rot, which is a Chinese expression for I'm only doing what I'm forced to do, basically. There are billionaires, that send their kids to college in America with Lamborghinis and stuff, but the average guy apparently in China is kind of stuck because you get more benefits by not working than working. The theme of communism is everyone according to his, what is it? Let's see. Everyone according to his need from everyone according to his ability, or something like that. And the idea is that if someone needs food and shelter more than you do, then they should have it provided. And also that you work no matter what, and everybody gets paid the same, whether you're a surgeon or a bench sweeper. My brother, who lived in Moscow for a number of years, said that the little old ladies would go out when it snowed and sweep the benches off. I had a friend who was a painter in Russia, and he said he could make more money than the surgeons could, because the surgeons were tied to a hospital. You had to perform your surgeries, in conjunction with the hospital. It's a team, and it's a surgical room and all that, so that they were very well monitored. Whereas the painters would hire a guy, an admin guy, like 30 painters would start a paint company, and maybe just a casually affiliated paint company. The only thing painters needed was paint. And so the administrative guy would fill out paperwork and bid on government jobs. And then when they got the paint, every 2 weeks they'd go paint a bit on the government job for a day. And the rest of the time they'd just use the paint that they got to paint whoever wanted paint and paid them. And he said you could make a really good living as a painter, which that was Lenny Zukin. I wonder, I'll look him up on LinkedIn if I remember. Okay, Lenny and Nina Zukin, and they were IT people, and they were very entertaining with stories about that stuff. Anyway, so not just quiet quitting in America, but in other countries as well. And according to the video, productivity in China keeps dropping as people do less and less because they figure out, and this is the flaw in socialism, you know, if you get paid for doing nothing, it's harder to get out of bed in the morning. You don't have ambition. And so, and I think that's what happened in COVID. I think we paid people to stay home, and surprise, surprise, they weren't that excited about coming back. So anyway, hybrid supervisors are less trusting. This was interesting on the supervisors than in-person managers. So 36% to 49%. So half the in-person managers thought their team was working. This lack of trust has led to software and other methods to retain control over remote workers. Yeah, so they spy on you, which doesn't work. Remember the mouse jigglers? I don't know if you know what that means, but there was software that would keep track of whether you were moving your mouse around, and so you could get an app that would just move the mouse a little bit, make it every now and then it would move it, so that the software thought that it was you and that you were awake. I never tried one. It doesn't matter much to me because I'm my own employee. Employees subvert it, and leaders have since developed that what Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella calls productivity paranoia, which is again mentioned. They really pounded this term, despite findings that both meetings and productivity metrics have increased. So whatever the metrics are that they're using. So what was Microsoft's conclusion? Quit the productivity paranoia. Pivot from stressing over whether employees are working enough to helping them prioritize what's most important. This is always true. That includes clarifying what to do and what not to do, and rewarding impact over activity. You know, everybody wants to be part of something. Everybody wants to be contributing. This was an interesting article. Kochava says it doesn't want to settle with the FTC. This was a list brokerage firm that sold precision location data. Okay, and so they claimed that it was they are removing sensitive locations, and sensitive locations are things like health and wellness, service centers, clinics, religious institutions. Ron Davis, who's on the board of WDMA, once told me that someone came into his office and said that he could supply Ron with the names and addresses of people who had gone to Elmbrook Church that previous Sunday, who were in attendance, you know, whose phone was in attendance. And Ron was kind of shocked by that we could track who went to church on Sunday. But I suppose you could. And so all of these things, homeless shelters, halfway houses, and more. In total, Kochava says it's eliminating 2.4 million sensitive locations, and they got a list from a third party. But prior to the lawsuits, Kochava was offered a proposed consent order from the FTC. The problem with the consent order, of course, would be implementation. So if somebody says, well, we want to remove all of the daycare centers, let's just say, because we don't want anybody tracking kids, okay? So they remove the daycare centers, but what if they miss one? Or what if someone is running a daycare from their home and it isn't classified on the list of daycare centers? You know, all of a sudden Kochava's going to be in hot water because they missed one. Or they missed, you know, there's a lot of ways to classify a type of business and a business address. Many, many, many ways. And that's what makes this really hard. You know, unless you have an actual list that says, here's a list of companies, here's a list of addresses you're not allowed to sell. Okay, well, anything else would be very difficult. And that's exactly what this goes on to say, is that now in the new lawsuit, the FTC has publicly stated that precise location data, any precise location data, is sensitive information. So, you know, it's hard to know where to settle on this because, you know, would I be comfortable with someone knowing that I'm at the office right now? Sure, I'm at the office. You can see it on TV live. I'm at the office. Okay, it doesn't surprise you, right? So Some of it is okay. It was a great New York Times article, and it showed after the inauguration in 2016 or 2017, it showed them tracking people from the inauguration to the Pentagon and other places. They could tell which phone was who by where they went. Okay, but Kochava says we have broken no rules to get us to the place that we're at. The Network Advertising Initiative, which Kochava is not a member, says that it's voluntarily restricting religious worship, sensitive healthcare services, military bases, LGBTQ plus identity in other places. Is that an identity? I don't know. Anyway, but only 3 companies in that NAI agreed to it, and Microsoft, Google, and Credo and Newstar have not signed on. So it's very interesting how that will unfold. I wanted to get to this yesterday. Why mail is a good bet as the cost of living crisis continues to bite. And this is from Business Daily UK, which I haven't probably ever run across before. But there are stats in the UK from JIC Mail, and it's a joint, here it is. JIC Mail Essentials is like a co-op that shares data and has a software system which makes it sounds like it's for printers and marketers to simplify cross-media comparisons, samplings of mail journeys, including top creatives, and test and learn ideas and benchmarks. I'm not sure exactly what it is. Happy to hear. I'll probably put a tag in here. But in very recent data, April to June 2022, it shows that close to half of mail, 44%, is still live in-home after 28 days. In Q2 21, which is a significant increase on Q2 2021, because households are placing more importance on mail content in economically changing times. I don't know, but 94% of mail is engaged with, i.e. it has at least one meaningful physical interaction. Could be picking it up, looking at it, and throwing it in the trash, but that's still sensory, touch, and sight, and an evaluation. We know it gets delivered. We know it gets delivered to a decision maker, because only the decision maker can throw the mail out, right, in any given home. So it's a significant contact. We know that if they didn't respond, that they did interact with it. And that gives us the labeled data set. When IBM taught Watson to play Jeopardy, they had 127,000 questions where they knew the right answer and anything else was the wrong answer. So they could test and test and test their algorithm. And that's what we can do in mail that no other medium can do at that level. Okay, so anyway, the data really shows increased relevance for these sectors for consumers in recent times. Since 2017, there's been a 60% increase in the proportion of mail prompting advertiser website visits. So mail is working to drive traffic. Now, if your attribution is only Google Analytics, you won't see the mail causal effect until after they've come to the website, in which case Google will claim it was from them. So mail is now the most trusted form of advertising communication. And if mail goes to the wrong person, including errors, it is sent more than one. Clearly, mail is a good way for them to do this. However, targeting is king. If the mail goes to the wrong person, includes errors, or sent more than once, not true. This line, we should cross this out. It becomes junk because I'm not interested in it. So if I get a Bass Pro catalog, my wife is, of course, evaluating the mail. She might throw it in the trash because to her, she doesn't even want me to see it. If I see a Chadwick of Boston catalog, I might throw it in the trash. It's junk to me, but it might not be junk to her, right? Understand? Junk is something I'm not interested in at the moment. And times change. It's a moving parade. So don't be too quick to decide that the mail is junk because it went to the wrong person or because it went more than once. with Lovesac, we found that for every one order we got mailing the customers, we got 2 orders from pass along. Okay? And you won't get a lot of pass along unless the customer is comfortable that they're going to get another catalog in case they need it, like Land's End. So sometimes the reason I can throw out a Land's End catalog is I know there's another one coming. Does that make sense? Okay. So junk is literally in the eye of the beholder. You know, it could be junk because I just bought. You know, I just bought that Gibson guitar for $4,000. We've seen high ticket orders oftentimes build in a lag. For Musician's Friend, we used to joke about it because the percentage of mobile homes in a zip code was positively correlated to our mailings. So we would joke that after the Gibson guitar came, and the wife said, "What the heck did you buy now?" And then there aren't any orders for about 4 years as the divorce is settled and the hubby moves into a mobile home, and then all of a sudden they wake up again. So, you know, junk mail is a difficult thing to pin down, and it mostly is I'm not interested in it at the moment. You know, I don't get criticized for not looking at digital advertising, but for some reason I get criticized because not every piece of mail is relevant to every recipient all the time. It's never going to be. Have a great day. Think about this. Oh, and yesterday I kind of cut this off, but for the rest of 2022, and in inspiration of some of the economic concerns, if you give me a call, there's no charge, and you can talk over your marketing challenges. As you know, I have a background in creative and in copy and in photography and in paper and printing and list selection and analytics and modeling. So, you know, almost anything's fair game. Although don't ask me about branding on network TV. Have a great day. Like and share. Your friends will know you're smart. And thanks again, Summer, for chiming in and answering that